Over the years, some Android versions have brought massive technical and visual changes, while others have tightened up the screws and added polish without shaking things up too much. The new release of Android for 2017 and beyond, Android 8.0 Oreo, fits somewhere in between these two extremes. Android is pretty stable at this point, so broad sweeping changes are less necessary with every new version. As a result, the new version isn't really about big, obvious new features. Instead, it's the sum of many smaller changes which help make it the most mature and powerful version of Android to date. I'm Alex from Android Central, and this is our review of Android 8.0 Oreo. Most of us see Android through the lens of whichever manufacturer's UI we choose, but the design direction of vanilla Android is still relevant. After all, more phone makers than ever are sticking to stock these days. The stock Android UI hasn't changed all that much in Oreo. If you're only looking for UI changes, you might spot just one, the brighter colour palette for the quick settings area. It's now light grey, not dark grey, reflecting a similar colour change in the stock settings app. Whether that's good or bad is mostly a matter of personal taste. The quick settings panel has been rearranged too, bringing the settings, user switching and edit shortcuts further down, helpfully making these easier to reach on larger phones. The retooled settings app is another big visual change. The slide-out hamburger navigation panel added to Nougat has been removed, and instead Google has made navigation simpler by redesigning each of the 13 sub-menus to make things easier to find. The new battery settings page is a great example of this. Screen on time is now shown right up top, along with the time since your last full charge. Scroll down a little, you'll see your most battery-hungry apps. You need to look below the surface to spot many of the other visual changes in Oreo. For instance, Google has finally started bringing a sense of order to app icons with new adaptive icons, which let you choose between 5 different cutout types. This means manufacturers like Samsung, Huawei, and LG like to use their own icon cutout shape. Now have a more reliable way to do this that doesn't result in bad, weird-looking icons for third-party apps. Android's animations haven't changed a whole lot in Oreo, but there are a couple of new sprites in the notification shade that add to the polish of Google's material design. Icons smoothly transition from the status bar into their notification cards before springing up into place, and icons now juggle themselves around in the status bar as new alerts arrive, making the whole system feel a bit more dynamic. And these are small changes, but they go a long way towards making this important area of the system feel more lively and fun. Finally, it's worth mentioning a handful of upgrades to that most important of smartphone features, emoji. Oreo adds a handful of new emoji while redesigning the icons themselves in a move away from the old Android-style blobs. And thanks to a new compatibility layer, developers can support these in apps going all the way back to KitKat. Android notifications were overhauled in Nougat, and Oreo intros a handful of changes to make the daily fire hose of alerts a little bit more manageable. The big new thing is notification channels, a new feature which brings categories of notifications to your apps, so you can filter different kinds of alerts from the same app. A social app, for instance, might have channels for direct messages, status updates, likes, or other interactions. And you can then choose how you're alerted for notifications in each of these categories: sound, vibration, LED, or you can even block notifications from some channels altogether. Now, there is a certain amount of micromanagement involved here. It's going to take time and a lot of individual app updates before we're going to know how successful this feature will be. Maybe notification channels will be genuinely useful for everyone, or perhaps we'll all be too lazy to bother with them. Speaking of laziness, Oreo also lets you snooze individual notification groups temporarily by swiping right and hitting the clock icon. The use case here is pretty obvious. You can now dismiss a notification you don't want to deal with right away without getting rid of it permanently. Elsewhere, media player apps like Google Play Music, YouTube, and Spotify can bring a splash of colour to their notifications, drawing upon the main colours of album art. It is a little bit distracting, and not everyone is a fan of this new feature, but it does at least help set media notifications apart from the rest of the clutter. Meanwhile, persistent notifications, for example from Google Maps, a VPN app, or anything else that might be running in the background, are being decluttered. These now shrink down to a shorter notification card in a slightly darker shade, which also helps set them apart visually. And that's important because Android itself now shows you a persistent notification if apps are using power in the background. That's all part of Google tightening the screws on background apps in 8.0, which we'll get to a little bit later. The notification changes don't stop there though. Ambient display, mostly untouched since the days of the good old Nexus 6, finally gets a bit of an overhaul in Oreo. The main ambient display area actually shows you less information than it did on Nougat, with only the time and a series of icons appearing when the phone is raised. The other side of that coin is that individual notifications now flash up in a more user-friendly way, which is better for quickly glancing at an incoming message or email. Balancing information density and glanceability is always a tricky proposition, but I think Google's made the right call here. And there's an altogether new way to see your notifications in 8.0. Android now lets launchers show you individual app notifications through the Notification Badges feature. Apps with a pending notification will display a coloured dot, and long pressing to open the app shortcut menu will show you notifications